Welcome to basket weaving for ages 8 to 11. My name is Heather and I'm with the Byron Public Library. I will be walking you through weaving your basket today. This will be similar to your final product, so just so you have that to keep in mind. Since you're receiving the link to the video, you should have also received a kit from the library. I'm going to walk you through all the supplies that you should have in your kit. The first thing is a packet of instructions. It's definitely easier to follow along with the video, but if at any time you get stuck, the instructions will walk you through step by step. Also, you have a pre-drilled base. This has 11 holes. Please keep in mind that this should not get wet. This should not be soaked at any time. This is the one part that would stay dry. We do have some different reeds here. The first group are going to be 11 straight pieces. These are called your spokes. They are 10 inches long and they will go in your pre-drilled base. Then you have some round bundles of the same reed, but these are going to be your weavers. So these are what's going to go around to make your basket. They are the same exact reeds. These I just soaked and cut and straightened them for you. Then you will also have a selection of pony beads in your kit. You'll just need 11 of them, but you do have extra, so you can pick your colors, or if you want to do a pattern, you should have enough to make a good selection there. And then items that you'll need from home. Number one would be something to cover your work surface. I recommend a towel because we're going to be working with wet reeds. So it's nice, you could just set it down on your towel and it protects your surface. You'll also need a ruler. The ruler we will use a couple times throughout making your basket. Scissors are helpful, but you may not need them. Sometimes we can tuck the ends of the reed into the basket. So you may or may not need them, but they're good to have on hand. A timer is something else that's good to have on hand. We do have to soak the reeds for 20 minutes at least. But it's definitely not necessary. You can keep track with the clock, but it could be helpful. You also want a container that holds water. I'm using this baking dish here. If you have a pan or a tray or a bucket, you could even block the sink and use that. You just want to keep in mind that it has to be at least 10 inches long and 2 inches deep. So I think we've gone through everything that we need. So if you are ready to start weaving your basket, you want to first soak all of your reeds. So that would be your spokes as well as your weavers. So go ahead and put those in water. You can set your timer or just take note. We want it to soak for at least 20 minutes. And then we will get started on making our baskets. Okay, now that we have soaked all of the reeds, we are going to start with our basket. Like I said before, you want to make sure that you soak at least 20 minutes. That will allow this to be pliable for you and it won't split. So we are going to start with our base and we are going to insert the spokes, which are the 11 straight pieces. And you want to make sure that it extends about 2 inches past the bottom. So we'll give you about 2 inches. So you can see here. So we are going to do that with all 11 of the spokes. Going to insert it in the holes that are already drilled for you. And having it extend about 2 inches past the base. So go ahead and do all the way around. Now I left all of my reeds in the water, so they are not drying throughout the time here. They are wet just right out of the water. And again, about 2 inches extending through to the bottom, all the way around. Go all the way through here, all 11. Okay, and one more here. Again, I'm taking them right out of the water. That's where the towel comes in handy. And then they haven't been sitting drying out. So you will have something that looks about like this. We are going to turn your base upside down. So we're gonna start like here. And you can start with any one spoke, but you're gonna bend it to its right in front of the next spoke, and then you'll tuck it inside and let it rest against the next one. So we'll start with this one. I'm gonna tuck it in front of the one to the right, and then it's gonna go behind the next one, and it's just going to rest there. You can kind of push it down a little bit. It will bend. So then you've got what looks kind of like this. You're gonna continue that pattern around here. I wanna make sure I'm in the frame for you. So then you'll move to the next one. We're going to go down and to the right in front of the one that's next to it, and then tuck it behind the next one. Continuing our pattern here, we're gonna go down and to the right, tuck it in front, and then get it behind. This one's not quite long enough. I'm gonna pull out just a little bit there. And because it's wet, it allows me to go back and pull it out a little bit here. So in front of the one that's right next to it, and then behind the second one, and we continue. This one will go down and to the right, in front of that one, and behind the next one. And this one in front of, and behind. And the same, we're following it. This one looks a little short too. I'm gonna make sure that we have the 2 inches there. So in front of the next one, behind, and rest against the one after that. So we're gonna bend it down in front of the next one and let it rest behind this one. And we're following it all the way through, in front of and behind, let it rest against the second one, and again in front of the one next to it, wrap it around, rest it against the one behind, and we're just 2 more here. Pull this one down just a little. I'm gonna go in front of, and then this is where we're gonna start tucking it in. So this spoke is already bent down. We're just gonna tuck that one. And the same with this one. We're gonna come down in front of what would be a spoke, but that's already tucked in. We're gonna tuck it underneath that one, and it rests behind the second one. So then this is what your base is going to look like. Now at this time, because we soaked it, you're able to push down and make it flat. So then this is the base of your basket, and then we're gonna flip it upside down. This is going to be the top of your basket. All right, so now we are on step 4 of your instructions. You are ready to weave. We are going to get a weaver, which is one of the coils that you've been soaking. And again, keep them all in the water so that they're not drying out while they're waiting. Kind of untangle it here. I did have to wrap them so that they would stay in a coil. Okay, and you can tuck your weaver in anywhere to begin. And we are doing what's called the over-under technique. So we are gonna start here. We're gonna start behind this spoke, and we're gonna do in front of the next one and behind the next one. So you can kind of see where they get the name over under, just telling yourself over and under, or in front of and behind. It's a little tricky to begin with, but once we get a row or 2, it's a lot easier. and you are pressing down your weaver so that it sits flush with the base. And we are going to continue. So here we've got over and under, and then the next one is over. Ooh, trying not to show you a mess of weavers here, but so this is under, so the next one is over. This one is going to be under. The next one is over. We've almost completed our first row. Over, under, and then we are back to where we started. So because there's an odd number of spokes, you should automatically be opposite of where you started. So our first spoke, we were behind it. So now that we've come all the way around, we're gonna be in front of it. And we continue our over, under, or in front of, behind pattern, but it's gonna be the opposite that it was the last time. So this one was behind, now we're in front of, and behind, in front of, and behind, and in front of, and behind, and in front of. So you get the idea that we're just continuing with this pattern, and it will be the opposite of what you did the last time. So this is the last one for row 2, and now we are starting with row 3. So it's gonna be the same as your first one. When we first started, we were behind it. Second row, we were in front of it, and now we're behind it again. And we continue with our pattern, the over-under technique. And we're gonna keep going all the way around our base. And then keep in mind that it's super, super important that everything stays wet. So you kind of have to work a little bit quickly with your spokes because that's what's allowing us to weave. We can move them around, is that they are wet. So if at any point you feel like these are feeling a little too dry, you can flip it upside down and soak them. Being very careful not to soak the pre-drilled base. And I hope you're not seeing a mess of reeds here, but just remember the over, under, and as long as everything stays wet, it's bendable. And as you're going through each row, you want to push down so you have a nice tight weave. And we're doing the over, under, or in front of, behind, but you're also pushing down. So I want to make sure you can see that, pushing it down each row so that it's a real nice and tight weave there. And we just continue with this, over, under, and we're gonna do this until our basket is about 2 inches tall. That's where our ruler comes in handy again. But at 2 inches, it'll be about halfway, and we'll be able to put our beads on. So again, continue with your over and under. It will bend really easily as long as it stays wet, making sure you leave your other weavers in the water until you're ready to use them. So we are getting to the end of our weaver, but we haven't quite yet done 2 inches. So I'm going to show you how to add a new one. All right, so the end, that's where my weaver ends. I'm going to make sure that I'm still in line with my pattern, but I'm going to tuck that end in, and we're going to start a new weaver. So I'm going to grab that out of the water, and you just fit that in together. You kind of overlap them, letting it rest behind the weaver that it's replacing, and you continue with your pattern. So you're over, under, We are going to do that until we get about 2 inches. Oh, I think I lost my spot here. So I gotta keep telling myself where I'm at. The first one should have gone behind. There we go. And then in front of. All right, I'm back on track here. Super easy, especially when you have the reed kind of bumping around here. But try to keep your spokes straight. That will help. Get this one tucked in. And then we continue with our pattern and sliding the weaver down, over and under. I'm hoping you can see this here. Doesn't look like a, a mess of weavers, but they do sort of have a mind of their own, so you just have to work around it. And keeping in mind too that, you know, these are pieces of wood, so everyone is unique. Some may have different markings or spots. They do pre-treat the reeds to keep it more uniformed, but it does happen where you have a spot or something like that. But that makes each one unique and special. We are just continuing with our pattern here. Over and under, over and under. As long as they stay wet, you'll be able to do it with no problem. If they start to feel a little dry to you, then go ahead and re-soak them. Just making sure that you keep the base dry. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit here. But you just kind of pull. Everything is really pliable since it's wet. So you can pull and rearrange, push down. Even if it's breaks, which I had one do my first basket I ever made. Because it was wet, it didn't really break apart. It just sort of splintered. So I was able to kind of smush it back into place, and you can't even tell on the basket now that I had to do that. Make sure our end stays in there. Let me get that. But as long as it's wet, you can pretty much do anything. It's kind of a fail-safe, you know, it's pretty easy to do. All right, and we want to continue this for 2 inches of basket. That will be our halfway mark. Just repeating to yourself the over-under technique. In front of, behind. That kind of helps keep me on track. And around the spokes. And it should start to look a little bit like a basket. This one is obviously kind of a small basket, which for most of us, this was our first time trying this. It's probably the best way to start, but it makes a cute like pencil cup. Yeah, it looks really cute, especially when we add the beads, gives it a little bit of color. So we are getting there. And everything is still feeling wet here for me, so far so good. I'm kind of straightening out the spokes as I go along, and pushing down on my weaver. So we try to keep a nice tight weave because it will dry to this shape. And while it's wet, you can still kind of form it. We're just going around here. What's nice with this being a video is that you can stop it at any time. I'm just kind of seeing where we're at here. We probably have a couple more times around here. So we're gonna keep going until we hit that 2-inch mark. And just continuing with our over, under, and looks like I'll have to add a weaver here shortly. Straightening the spokes as I go and pushing down on the weaver to give us a nice weave. And over and under. See if we can get it behind. Make sure you can see that. There, that one worked a little bit better than the first one. We tucked the end of that weaver behind, and we're just going to start a new one. And all you're doing is pretty much just sticking it in where the other one ended so that you could keep going. I'm going to set this here for one moment, and I'm going to unravel my weaver. All right. So we ended here. We're going to continue our pattern. Kind of rest it behind there, and we'll continue with the over under. And a way to double check that you're in the right spot is as you're doing this, it will be the opposite of the last row that you did. That's a good way to double check that you are on the right path. Still doing the over under. And I talked about earlier, you know, these are all pieces of wood. So you can see here how one is a little bit darker, and that's just the nature of wood. You know, everything is, like I said, they do pre-treat it, trying to make it look uniform, but there is some variances. And that will be in any of either the reeds or the bases. So we are doing our over under technique, and that's what's giving us this really pretty weave. And we want to go until about 2 inches. We're getting there, closer and closer, but each spoke I go by, I pull it, kind of keep it straight, and then I push the weaver down at the same time. This is going to be such a cute basket when we're done. Let's see where we're at here. We've got a couple more rows to do. So we are going to keep going around. And you can stop this video at any time, speed it up. That's what's really nice. This is a little bit more involved than some of our crafts. So this one's nice because nice to do the video, I should say. Because then you can kind of do it at your own pace. It is great to have a helper. So if you have a helper with you, that will help out a lot. And the number one thing to remember is that we have to keep all of our reeds, so that's both the spokes and the weavers, wet. So it's okay if you have to re-soak anything. That's just the most important thing, because you can fix just about anything or redo just about anything, but you want to keep everything nice and wet. Probably a couple more rows here, but we are getting super close to the 2-inch mark. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Just continue with the over under, straightening out your spokes and pushing down the weaver. Give us a nice tight weave. I think we're getting there. Over, under, and if you want to double check, look at what the very last row was, because you're doing the opposite of the last one. Over and under. Let's see where we're at in here. Maybe about 2 more rows. Over, under. It's trying to get different views here so that you can see. We're gonna have to add a weaver again. So let's see, we're gonna leave it behind that one and add in a new weaver. I'm gonna just set this down because the weaver coils are kind of wrapped around themselves here just so they would maintain shape and not get too crazy in your kit. All right, so we tucked that one behind. We're gonna get this one down in there and then just continue our pattern in front of and behind, or over, under. Let's get that down, push it down, there we go. And we can keep right with our pattern here. And over and under. Okay, I'm gonna do probably one more row. That should put us at about the 2-inch mark. And that's when we can add our beads. Since I just started that weaver, I wanna make sure it's really established in there before I start adding beads. Okay. All right. So we've got about 2 inches. I'm going to flip this way just so you can see it from your angle. You've got about 2 inches here of basket. And now we are going to add beads. So all you need to do is slide one bead onto each spoke. Again, you will have more than 11 beads, but I gave you some so that you can pick your colors. So you can start at any spoke and you just slide your beads on. Slide them on. The weaver's still there. We're just kind of ignoring it at this point, but we will continue to weave right around it. So you are just sliding your beads on here. One on each spoke. Hopefully you can see. There we go. Here. And you will have some left over, but that's okay. And there we go, one on each spoke. So this is holding it in towards you here so you can see. This is what you'll have, one bead on each spoke. So then you'll go back to your weaver and you just go right over the next one and you just continue your over under pattern. So this is what we're gonna have here. And starting off is a little tricky, but then once you get the first row on, it's just like you were doing it before. Straightening out your spokes and pushing down your weavers. You wanna keep a nice tight weave. And this will hold your beads on. And just remember your over under technique. Kind of push it down, over, under, over, under. Now we are going to do the weaving again for another 2 inches. And that will be the whole part of your basket. So we're gonna do 2 inches again and just over, under, or in front of, behind. This is the basic basket weave. This is an excellent place to start. And just follow your pattern, over, under, straighten your spokes as you go and push down your weaver. So that keeps everything nice and tight there. And over, under, over, under. Over, under. Over and under, straightening the spokes and pushing down on the weaver. In front of, behind, we're gonna end this weaver and add in a new one. So you're tucking the end inside. I'm gonna turn it here so you can see. The end is tucking inside. And we are gonna start a new one. I'm just gonna lay that down so you can see it. Untangle the new one. And we're gonna stick it down in there. Hopefully you can see. That will kind of hold it in place, and you continue with the pattern you were doing. And remember, another good way to check is to see what you did the last row, because it will be the opposite. Now, after I get the 2 inches here, I'm going to soak the spokes again, because they are feeling a little bit dry, but they are still bending. So I should be able to make it to the 2. But if at any time you're uncertain, you can soak it at any point in time. Just remember keeping the base dry. You never want to soak that. Over and under, about 2 inches up from your beads. Straightening your spokes and pushing down on your weaver. Over and under. Hoping I'm getting the right angle for you guys to see the over-under technique. All right, we're moving along here, guys. Have to say I was a little nervous my first basket, but I really, really enjoyed doing it. I hope you guys feel the same way. I thought, like, I don't know if I could do this. I was afraid everything was gonna break on me, but just remember to keep everything wet, because you can just about fix anything. Like I said, the first one I did, it kind of split when I bent it, like in here, but it didn't break because it was still wet. So I was able to kind of push it back together, and you can't even tell. Once it dried, you couldn't even tell. Well, we're still doing over, under, over, under. And I'm gonna have to add a new weaver. See. We are are going to tuck it in here. And then here, I'll lay it on its side so you can see. Adding in my new weaver. All right, the towel really comes in handy because these things are a little squirrely. I'm gonna put the new weaver down in there where the end of the other one is and just continue my pattern over and under and over and under. Pushing down on the weavers and pulling on the spokes, making sure that they're straight. So mine are getting a little dry. I think I can make it to the 2-inch mark here. It's a little tricky when you start a new weaver, but kind of push it down. You can kind of mold it and it should fit right in there. Over and under. This would be cute, like in your room, if you have at your desk or like a homework station. They would make really cute gifts too. And you might find that you really like doing basket weaving. There's lots of kits online on Amazon, and some get really involved, very intricate. They look really fancy. Some have, their weavers are real thick, just to give the basket a different look. But I think the one thing that stays the same is the fact that everything has to stay wet so that it's pliable, bendable. All right, we're getting there, guys. Hopefully you can see here. The weavers do go a little crazy, so trying to show you, kind of flops around a little bit. Pushing down on your weavers and straightening your spokes. That will give you a nice look to your basket. And continuing with our pattern, I just keep repeating over, under, or behind, in front of. Sure the weavers are pressed down, and even the shape of the basket too, you can kind of push and mold around. You know, as you're weaving, sometimes it'll lean a little bit to one side or the other. All right. So I've got about 2 inches here, and we are going to finish with our last spoke. Now at this point, just to be safe, I'm going to soak the spokes again because I will need to bend them. It's going to look very similar to the base here, how we finish it. So I'm going to go ahead and soak these here, your spokes, for another 20 minutes. And then I'll be right back with you. Okay, so now that we've had time to let the spokes soak, which I did putting it upside down in my container of water, we're going to go ahead and finish the top here. It's very, very similar to how we started it, the bottom of our basket here. So you start with any one spoke, and you want to go in front of the spoke to the right, and then you go behind and you're going to tuck the end in. And we just continue that all the way around. Kind of push it down in there. So we're going to go in front of the one to the right and then behind the next one and tuck it down in there. Some tuck really nicely, other ones you have to work on it a little bit. If it does stick out too far, you can clip them. So again, we're just gonna go take the next spoke. We're gonna go in front of the spoke to the right of it, behind the next one, and then tuck down into our basket. Still pushing down, kind of molding the top here. We're gonna take the next one and go in front of the next, behind, tuck the loose end into the basket, and we're gonna continue that pattern. So take your spoke, go in front of the one to the right of it, and tuck in. And continue around, still pushing where you can kind of mold the top of it, making it a smooth border for your basket. This one's a little short. I'm gonna go in front of and then tuck it in, just continuing that pattern and pushing down so that you have a smooth border. One more time here. We're gonna take it, go in front of the one to the right of it, and then tuck it into your basket behind. This is our last one. So tucking it in and still pushing it down, because when it's wet, you can mold it a little bit better. Here's our last one, and we're just gonna tuck it down into our basket. And because it's still wet, this is a perfect time that you can mold it, shape it. If there's anything sticking out that you can see in here, this one's a little bit long, I can clip that with my scissors, but it's not necessary either. We can clip it and push it down in there, tuck it in. Some are really easy, other ones kind of take a little bit of more work to get it in between. We're gonna push down, you can mold it. And so the top of your basket is gonna look almost identical to the bottom. And that is your finished basket. Now it's still wet, so it will change color a little bit. I'm gonna show you the completed one that I showed you at the beginning. So this is when it's all dry, you can kind of see here. And again, with wood, you know, they all have different variances, so sometimes you might see a spot or two. My base had a spot here. Yes, but that's your completed basket. So once it's dry, it's ready to use. And I think we covered it all. If you have any questions, just refer to the instructions. My email is on there, so if there's anything I can help you with, please let me know. And then I would love to see your finished products. We'd love to share them. So if you could send me a picture, that would be really great. We hope you had a good time today, and we will see you soon. Thank you.